And welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Hope everybody's off to a fabulous start to their day today. We got a lot to get into on the program today. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock for his weekly visit. We'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him coming up later in the program. The best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. So as always, we encourage your participation on that. And I have good news, Joe. Text line's working just fine today. How we doing? Good morning.
That's exciting. Well, I'm doing okay. I had the wrong headphones and I just had a complete panic freak out. But I had a half a beer last night at the Christmas party, and I'm hungover because that's what happens in Nashville these days, right? It doesn't take much; you just get hungover.
No, yeah. I mean, just you, the Titans. All it takes is just a little bit of pleasure, little bit of success, and the hangover just comes straight away now.
Yep. I was like, man, that half beer is really delicious. It might be the greatest half beer I've ever had. And then boom, today just feeling terrible. No, but seriously, yeah, I had the wrong headphones and that was scary for a minute. I was gonna have to do the show and just try to read your lips.
Was there no sound coming out of these headphones?
Well, no, they were like my, these ones are like the phone thing, like they go on the phone,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, I thought these are the ones I had them ready, and then you're like, freak out. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. Nick Keyser, good morning. How we doing?
Morning, fellas. Should have just spent the night, Robbie, but I'm doing great.
Yeah, late light last night. Actually, wasn't that bad. I mean,
no,
6:30
really.
game time, so it could be worse. Predators in Toronto, but back at it tonight as the Predators take on the Montreal Canadiens. I'll have your pregame at 5 o'clock, so make sure you're tuned in for that. And Rexrode, we got ourselves another 3-2 loss to discuss last night. This time not going to overtime. So for the fourth consecutive game, they've lost 3-2. This one they did not get a point out of. You're up 1-0 after 2 periods of play. You had not generated hardly anything offensively. The goal you scored was a dump in from the neutral zone that took a weird hop over the shoulder, basically, of the goalie. Ended up back on Jonathan Marchessault's stick in the crease, and he scored. And other than that, you hadn't generated hardly anything offensively. You had 12 shots on goal through the first 2 periods, but you did a pretty good job defensively of limiting Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, William Nylander, and they had 19 shots on goal and really not much that was dangerous through 2 periods. And then the first 5 minutes of the third, Joe, it was the Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews show. Matthews scored twice. Nylander scored the other. And you went from up 1-0 to down 3-1 the first 5 minutes into the third period. As all she wrote for the Predators last night. Yet another loss and yet another, Joe, anemic performance offensively.
Yeah. Speaking of the holiday party, we took a little bit at JBJ's to get it on the TV and finally did. And we, was sitting there with Chase when right at the start of that third period. It's like, well, they haven't generated much, but hey. And then we're just sort of okay. Well, I guess you can kind of walk away from this one now. Just bang, 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 and you're done. But again, the prevailing problem, like you said, is just, I mean, really, you would take for an entire game against those guys. I mean, you have to allow for, like, they're going to make some plays, they're going to score some, but this team's inability to generate offense is pretty consistent and hard to watch. I think to an extent.
Yes.
Again, it's like the theme in this city, but it's just I don't know, man. It's things just aren't connecting, as we've discussed many times. It's just not. It's not working.
No, it's not working. They're now 7-13-6 on the season. They're back at it today against Montreal. And look, Montreal's not any good. Neither really is Ottawa, who they've got on Saturday. Of course, neither are they right now either. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, right now they can't score on anybody. I mean, they cannot get past the 2-goal mark. They're the worst team offensively in the league in terms of goals for per game. I think they went down to 2.30 goals per game after the performance last night. I mean, it's just abysmal. And right now, Alex Doherty from the Tennessean put this out there last night. They're on pace right now to have their worst season ever. Think about that. Like, this is their 26th season. They were an expansion team, and not
Back
an
when expansion teams meant something.
Yeah, like not an expansion team that, was gifted this ridiculous roster like we saw with Vegas and Seattle. They're an expansion team back when you had to literally build it from the ground up. And they're on pace right now to be the worst team that they've ever had. Like, it's simply mind-boggling. They're 7-13-6. Again, it's looked the same all year. Doesn't look like they're any closer to figuring out now than they were this time 3 weeks ago. And, the same conversations that we've been having, Joe, it just kind of feels like we're going to continue to have until something major happens, whether that's the firing of the head coach, the trading of somebody at some point that maybe we don't expect, if that's possible. But, I mean, they look like a team that just has no hope right now, which is a tough place to be in early December of an NHL season.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, you mentioned, Montreal tonight, Ottawa. You have to get 4 points in those games. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's like, like you have to. So, and it's not like if you do that's, anyone's holding a parade. But like, at this point, it gets to like, just can you get 2 points in any way? And these are two teams that you have to get them against, and then I don't know. There's some consistent, I guess, performances at this point that, even though it may be contrary to what career performances have been, I mean, sometimes that's what happens, right? Like, players kind of become what they are. They become different players at some point, and it's got to be part of the situation here, right?
Got to be part of it. I mean, look, it's getting harder and harder to avoid the coach conversation. And again, my opinion on Andrew Brunette has not changed. I think he's a good coach, but they're 7-13-6. Like, this is reaching like almost unbelievable status. And it's so bad right now. You're getting to the point where too much longer this, then you're not going to have a choice. Like, you're going to have to make a move. It just is what it is. Like, I don't, well, I say that conventionally you don't have a choice. Now, Barry Trotz may just totally reject that out of hand. I don't know. Like, it's that may be the way that he approaches it. But you know how, like, sometimes you can just kind of feel it when nothing's working and it just doesn't feel like anybody's got any answer. Like, that's what I feel like with this team right now. It feels like Groundhog Day, trying to either talk about him or watch him go play. Like, they don't have an answer. They do not have an answer for this. And I don't know what you do with that with this much time remaining in a season. Like, this is going to turn into a really toxic thing if this continues here. And like I said, there's no reason for me to believe they're pulling themselves out of this. They're showing absolutely zero sign of that they're pulling themselves out of this. And you bring up the performance, like, Forsberg not having the year he had a year ago. I mean, go down the list. Is anybody? Like, Yossi's starting to figure it out. The points are coming for Yossi, and I think he's on a 6-game point streak. He's over the 20-point mark. He's right now getting back to being on pace to having that type of a year that we're accustomed to seeing, at least offensively, from him. That's it. Like, go look at the numbers. They're not close. Like, Forsberg, I think, is on pace for like 27 goals, which is not a terrible season, but it's not what you expect from him at this point. Stamkos, Marchessault, not doing anything offensively. They've tried over and over again, Joe, to make Tommy Novak work as this second line center. He hadn't scored a goal in a month and a half. And last night, he goes to be the third line wing on Fedor Svechkov's line with Luke Evangelista. And their second line center last night was Mark Jankowski. Like, that's where they're at right now. They're trying Mark Jankowski with Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. they seem to me to be a team that has no answer whatsoever.
So and again, I don't know that, you obviously have to have a willing partner and all that, but could the major shakeup be a big ad? Is that what it has to be? Does Barry Trotz need to? Because obviously Svechkov comes up, but we know that's I mean he's going to be a part of this team's future. But I mean you have to go get someone, right? You said that before we ever saw this team play a shift of hockey. Could that be enough to shake it up as opposed to the conventional coach firing?
Maybe. I would just like, who is that? And are they one player away? Like, is one player right now down the middle? Because that's where it would have to be. It would have to be a centerman. Are they one centerman away from either slotting everybody where they need to be or sparking the team or whatever it is? Or is it just broken? Like sometimes, Joe, we see this in sports where you add a lot of things on paper and there's no reason on paper for it to not really work out, or at least to be, a baseline of pretty good. And for whatever reason, just the chemistry, the math, whatever, the fit just doesn't work. And this kind of feels like a team that just doesn't work, right? Maybe if you want to blame that on the coaching, maybe it is. Maybe look, I think Andrew Burnett's a good coach, but maybe it is just as simple as, well, you fire the coach, you change up the way you're doing things, and the Predators, for whatever reason, get this bump that Vingan's talked about. That if you look at the data, for whatever reason, it does exist when you fire the coach. I don't know what that is, but right now, like, part of me is just wondering, Joe, and that I went on Toronto radio yesterday, and they were asking me about this. Is like, did they need to go get basically the same type of player when it came to Stamkos, Marchessault? Like, did you need two of them, or could you have gotten one and then gone to go, try to go get that playmaking centerman on top of it? Well, it's too late now. Like, they've done
Right.
it, and those guys are here. So, like, it is what it is. But it is, I think, a fair question to ask when it's gone this poorly, Joe. Yeah, I think wondering aloud if they just don't fit at all with this group is a fair thing at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think they're, like one player away, but I guess the idea is kind of what you said, which is if you did address that clear issue, glaring void in the lineup, then you need the play, your one player and then a whole bunch of players playing at their best away.
Right.
So if you do plug that in effectively, then do some other things kind of work out around it, and all of a sudden, I mean, hey, I'm throwing stuff at the wall right now.
Well, I think they are too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the problem. I think they are too. I think that's the point of the season that they reached. One texter says, "Hey, I hear Kyle Turris is available." Kyle Turris is available. Predators are paying Kyle Turris, so could come contribute.
How about Joey, big physical center?
615-737-1025 is our phone number. The Preds lose again last night. They dropped to 7-13-6 on the regular season. We'll take your reaction to that on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 the game.
Marner on the left wing, drops it for Matthews, gets around a Pred, and he scores another. He never really even shot it, but it rolled through UC Saros. And the Leafs lead 2-1. Matthews looking for a natural hat trick here in the first 5 minutes of the third. Marner down low, nice pass across, and Nylander hits the open net with a one-timer from the low left circle.
Maple Leafs get the 3-2 win last night against the Nashville Predators. Preds dropped to 7-13-6 on the regular season. Taking your thoughts on that. Let's head back to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Bob in Antioch. Bob, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. First, I have a question. Is the Predators roster the oldest in the NHL?
It is not the oldest, but it is up there. I think it's in the top 5, if memory serves me correctly.
Okay. So my comment, and I'd like your reaction to it. My comment is this. One of the reasons, not the only reason, but I think one of the main reasons for what's happened this year is that they do have an older roster, and most of their top guns are a year older, obviously, and maybe on the backside of their career. So how much of their problem this year do you think has to do with the fact that maybe a number of their top guys have slipped a little bit from last year to this year?
Yeah, thanks for the call, Bob. I mean, Joe, I think you've got to consider that a strong possibility. Now, I guess the question is this. Is that part of this answer? Probably. Yeah, could be. Like, you had Ryan O'Reilly have a great season last year. He's not been able to replicate that this year. He's in his mid-30s. Gus Nyquist put up over 70 points last year. He's not been able to replicate that. That's not overly surprising to me, right? Like we talked about that heading into the year. Stamkos is 34. Right. Jonathan Marchessault is 33. Both those guys scored 40 last year. Roman Josi's 33. Is that part of the answer here, that those guys are, getting into their mid-30s and their play's starting to slip? Could be. I think that's probably part of it. I guess my question would also be, Joe, what's the likelihood that all of them are falling into that right now at the same time? That's where it gets harder for me to believe that all of them at the same time have just like fallen off the table. That's a pretty steep hill to get to that point when all of them were as productive as they were a year ago.
Yes, no, for sure. But I think, if it's true of a couple of them, and then you just have the other issues of just chemistry, right? And just the sort of intangible things that are missing for this team, on top of some of the a couple of them or whatever are just, we're starting to see a real decline. I mean, it happens at some point for everybody, and sometimes it happens fast. I'm with you. I don't think it's that's purely the answer, which is just like, oh, they've all just woke up and like, it's like the Simpsons episode where Bart, goes to Camp Krusty, and and Homer and Marge have this amazing summer together, and it's like, oh, this is so awesome. And then all of a sudden there's like a news like, the kids have taken over Camp Krusty, and like Homer like lost all this weight and stuff, and he actually started to grow some hair back and everything, in the summer. And He's like, don't be the boy, don't be the boy, don't be the boy. And then they show Bart, and he's like the leader of the mutiny, and then Homer's belly goes boop, and his hair falls out immediately. I don't think that happened to all these guys, like snap the finger when the season started, but it's got to be part of it, I think, right? It is a lot of people who you're counting on to maintain production. And again, like you said, it's different situations. Nyquist, predictable, Forsberg is, look, I thought Forsberg would benefit from this, and build on this. So, I mean, you could go through each one and kind of diagnose it, and it's probably a different level of surprise. But I think it's being old, and it's also just not connecting with each other in important ways. And also it's a huge missing piece, at least one huge missing piece too, right?
No doubt about it. Cody on the text line says, losing a great coach because our complacent players won't wake up. Same thing happened to Peter Laviolette. Joey from Bellevue says, so if they fire the coach, they bring in someone with a different philosophy. then it takes another 20 plus games for the players to adapt to a new system. What's the point? This is from Joey from Bellevue on the text line. What do you think of that?
I hear that. Like, I think the same thing, but as you've said, Robbie, I mean, this, for whatever reason, it does work a lot. I mean, I guess it's just like, hey, doing different stuff is fun. Let's, and of course there's a kick in the butt that comes with that, right? I mean, I mean, you can't really send much stronger of a message than firing the coach.
Right.
But I agree with the logic there.
Yeah. I mean, depending on who they would go get, right? Like it could be a totally different philosophy, a totally different way of doing things. And on the surface, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like if you're going to try to learn that on the fly. But like I said, Vinkin's got the numbers for whatever reason. It works in the NHL. I don't really know what to say on that front. I got one texter that says, this isn't very serious to throw what you have out there knowing that you need to make a move. So what if you overspend? You've tied yourself to sinking ships in terms of contracts. They always feel slow to make moves or changes, except for the free agent frenzy. Really wish we would have moved Novak last year. Seems like another player that ain't worth the contract. And the thing is, Joe, like Novak specifically, look, I'm not going to sit here and try to pin this all on him because they have way more issues than just Tommy Novak right now. But again, like the idea that he was ever going to be your second line center, I always thought was ludicrous. And here we are. You're 20 games into it for him. So they've played 26 as a team. I think he missed 6. He's played 20 games. He's got 3 goals, which, by the way, has not scored since October 22nd. He's got 1 assist. 1 assist. 4 points in 20 games for Tommy Novak. Think about that. I mean, it's basically nothing that he's brought to the table.
Yeah, there's a lot of second guessing with all this. That was a first guess, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a first guessing situation. And yeah, I mean, you can circle around with some of these things. Again, Trotz is the guy who ultimately, is going to have to make the decision on Brunette, and but of course you look at this and Trotz, I think, would do some things differently last offseason if he could.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, like it's everybody. Yossi's starting to play better, but like Brady Shea, it's not gone well for him. And that's the thing, like Philip Forsberg's not old. Philip Forsberg's 30, right? Like it's not like Philip Forsberg is one of those guys that's in the mid 30s, and he's just not been good enough. Like I think he's got 1 goal like in his last 9 or 10 games. Like they need him to start carrying them a little bit offensively. And it's unfair to put it all on him, but he's got to be more productive. He's got to find a way to be more productive than he's been, even with everything going on around him. It's not been good. So again, I'm not going to sit here and put it all on Tommy Novak. He has not been good. He's not helping, but too much of that's going on in this lineup right now. And again, Joe, Stamkos, you could see it when they're on the power play. Stamkos is a weapon. Like that shot, that the ability to, draw defenders, make plays to the middle of the ice when he's not shooting it on the power play. He's really dangerous there. I mean, I can probably count on one hand the amount of dangerous opportunities they've generated when he's been on the ice 5-on-5. And that to me is incredibly concerning. And you could put Marchessault in that category too.
Yeah. But back on Forsberg, I mean, over the last decade, how many times have the Preds basically been carried for like 10 games by him? I mean, talk about there's nothing stopping a heater by him from happening. And boy, do they need one.
They sure do. A lot of people either impressed and or concerned about your Simpsons reference that you just gave. I give it an A+.
Hey, I mean, it's one of the great Camp Krusty is one of the great episodes ever. I mean, seriously, just like, don't be the boy. Don't be the boy. Belly pops out, hair falls out. It's just like, oh God. That was back when Conan was a writer. And also, Chase from White Bluff is saying they need dark mode uniforms. I think Chase from White Bluff needs to back off the dark mode uniforms a little bit, buddy.
Hey, it's dark mode uniforms. The results are what they are, baby. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Rexrode would like to do some yelling coming up next, so I'm going to allow him to do so. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. back in. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up at 6:45. We will go ahead and take your best things and worst things on our text line, 615-737-1025. So, Rexrode, you got some things that you need to say. I turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, well, now I'm sitting here and it's like, well, maybe I should just save this for the rest. There's a bigger picture here, okay?
Okay.
About just the bitching that is happening. I think I'll probably save some of that. It's just, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this, but apparently now every AD in the world is just like on Twitter. You know,
I have seen this.
It's incredible. And then they're screaming at each other. And in a way, I'm here for it, but also grow up. But, you know, so we talked about this, and I'm bringing this to you because obviously we talked about it yesterday, and it was pretty simple, I thought, right? I thought it was pretty simple when we talked about the Ohio State Tennessee thing. I mean, when you really go through each team, you know, you go through each team, and it's just like it really is as basic as yeah, Ohio State has the one better win. Again, you can believe in your heart that Indiana sucks if you want. You know, they went and they got smoked at Ohio State, and their schedule strength hasn't been great. So that's fine, okay? But like objectively speaking, the rankings do count. They do matter, of course. Like we all can agree on that, right? There's some subjective stuff in this whole process. That, I mean, Danny White said this, you know, yesterday on a show in Knoxville, that he'd like to see it a little bit more formalized. And you know, okay, I am more like computerized. And
he wants the BCS, baby.
Exactly, he wants a BCS computer back. But I mean, to a point, I get what he's saying. Like, let's be a little bit more clear with this matters more than this. I think that's fair. But this is. You know, maybe I'm calling out Wes because he refused to get into this on Twitter with me, which at times with Wes Rucker, friend of the show, love Wes, 24/7 Sports, he's covered the Vols for a long time. You know, we've seen Wes and Kyle Tucker get into it, and of course, as you know, Robby, I've been like brokering the Middle East peace with them at times before.
Yes,
it was a great day. And by the way, you know, I don't know if Kyle's listening yet, but I know Kyle's a daily listener, but you know. Rucker and Tucker, what great sports talk show would that be?
Oh, yeah.
Rucker and Tucker, you know, a little Kentucky, Tennessee, all day long. You know,
coming on right before Stilly and Pauly, could be great.
Right out here, and after Rucker and Tucker, we got Stilly and Pauly today. Yeah. So, but this is what Wes tweeted, and this is again feeds into and Pat Forty. You know, Pat Forty wrote a column yesterday that I'm reading. I'm like, you know. It's about Sankey, and he get in his way and sort of some of his statements, and it's like he's a little bit threatening, like we better get our teams in, right, and stuff like that, which is fine. The only problem I have with it is like, but Pat, you really think Miami should be in over Alabama? Let's go through that, because I understand people pissed about the brand name of Bama and all. I get it, but like. I'm sorry. Like the problem is people are like, oh my God, how does Miami fall 6 spots? You know how? By being way overranked before. That's the problem. They were way overranked. So when you overrank teams, then people get shocked when you're like, oh, actually they do suck. Oh, yep, sorry. But they shouldn't be in the thing. But here's Wes's tweet. He says, Ohio State being seated ahead of Tennessee is the same as seeding Bama over other teams for that final spot. It's human nature that certain brands are given more benefit of the doubt than others. It's not that the committee supports them. It just believes they're usually better. So again, I don't disagree with the human nature of brands. I think that this is why I think Ole Miss should be in. I do. I think Ole Miss has a slightly better case than Alabama, and I don't doubt that the Bama brand, you know, intuitively, right? Like not like the committee sits there and says, yeah, but it's Bama. But in the people's heads before they hit that vote, it's just Bama. I believe that bias exists. But objectively, Wes, as I tried to tweet at him, so you're telling me that this tweet suggests that it's clear that Tennessee has a better resume than Ohio State. Please tell me how. And of course, he didn't respond. So anyway, I wanted to yell at him today. Now I feel better.
Good. I'm glad that you do feel better. again, as we discussed yesterday, if you're a Tennessee fan really upset by this, I would just wait to the end of the weekend and see what happens with Penn State and see what the chaos kind of looks like after that, and then we'll see. But look, it's pretty simple to me with Ohio State. Yes, they had a bad loss to Michigan, right? They also have two by the committee, and you can agree with this, you can disagree with it. That's fine. But by the committee's rankings, they have 2 wins that are better than yours if you're Tennessee.
One on the
Indiana and
road.
Penn State, one on the road. So, like the fact that they are the ones that get the home game ahead of you, I don't have a problem with that. Like based on the way that the rankings have played out here. So we'll see. Like, it may come down depending on what happens Saturday. It may not even come down to Tennessee and Ohio State. Like if Penn State loses, I think that they're going to drop, and I think they'll drop below Ohio State. Now, will they drop below Tennessee? I don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to see what that looks like. But Wes in particular, and again, I love Wes, but Wes spent like half of the last part of the season here yelling about how Indiana doesn't have any quality wins, and I agree with that. But Ohio State's got 2 of them. Are we just going to ignore that now? Like Ohio State's got 2 quality wins that are 2 college football playoff teams, one of which, by the way, is currently number 3 in the rankings, and they did it on the road. So, like, I said it yesterday, and I remain this way today. It's really stunning to me, like, how many Tennessee fans don't get this and are, like, really upset by it. Like, I get it. You want a home game. I want them to have a home game, too. Like, a playoff game at Neyland Stadium would be awesome. But it's not some huge crime to me that Ohio State's in front of them.
Yeah, and again, there's been a fair amount of Miami stuff that it's just like, again, it's really more hating the SEC, right? I mean, I got a texter saying, I wish they would make it an SEC only playoff just to keep you guys from complaining. We've been talking about how the SEC overall it's not vintage this year. They don't have any team that's like, oh my God, that team. They've got a couple teams that might win. They got 3 teams that might win it. I could see Tennessee, Texas, or Georgia if they play their absolute best and get some breaks, making runs. But this is not a great SEC. But again, the specific individual resumes of three lost teams that just happen. It's not Miami's fault they didn't get SMU. It's not Miami's fault they didn't get Clemson. The 2 teams playing for the ACC title weren't on Miami's schedule.
Right.
They, as the committee said,
it is Miami's fault they lost to Georgia Tech and Syracuse.
Exactly. So, and look, the bottom line is their best win is 52-45 over an unranked Louisville team. Like, I'm sorry. So you can sit here and talk about the brand bias and the committee and all that stuff, but just make sure you're also being honest about what Miami has done. And I'm seeing some people who aren't this week. So, but you know what, man? It's, look, the whole thing is, you got to love it, right? Like just the arguing of college football. Like what would life be if we didn't have college football to scream about? Like, and whatever the system is, BCS, the old days when the polls deciding that, when, I mean, I remember the year that like the coaches gave Nebraska the national championship over Michigan in '97, I mean, it was a great time to argue. So that continues to be a consistent element. Love you, college football.
Officer Watson says, what quality win does Penn State have? That's a great point. Like, that's why I'm saying I wouldn't freak out yet, because if they lose on Saturday, then I'm really interested to see what happens with them. Because, Joe, there are some people that have the opinion of, well, if Penn State loses in the conference title game, the committee is not going to punish them that much for playing an extra game and losing it, and they'll still host the home game. And maybe they will. Maybe that's the way it'll play out. But I'm just saying, the committee in the 4-team playoff has punished people for losing in the conference championship game before. Yeah. And if they do, and they get to 2 losses, Tennessee will have a better resume than Pitt State. Now, I can't guarantee you that means that they'll have a home game and it'll be Tennessee at home and Penn State on the road. I don't know what the committee's going to do. I'm just saying I wouldn't lose my mind yet if I'm a Tennessee fan.
Well, yeah, look, I understand that they have expressed the sentiment of, teams shouldn't be penalized. I find that to be ridiculous. Like you said, I'm sorry, but it's another data point. If you can get the reward for playing that game, all these teams playing this weekend, you get the reward. the Power 4 teams that you get a bye and a top 4 seed, then there must be a risk the other way. There has to be. It cannot just be, hey, everybody's happy and the win counts, but the loss doesn't. No, it doesn't work that way. So I do think with Penn State, because like people are saying, Officer Watson, Chase, other people right now, their best win is over Illinois, at home. I mean, that's the one ranked team they have. They've beaten some pretty good teams soundly, like on the road, like Wisconsin and stuff, but like nothing great. So I do think it could be like a Miami situation where I know it's still number 1 Oregon, so I still think it has to be convincing. But if it's clear that they're outclassed in this game, I think you look at their resume, and I think the committee absolutely should potentially drop them several spots, but we'll see if they do.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. It is time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
My best is the SEC in men's basketball.
I so knew you were doing this.
I mean, 14-2 over the ACC in the SEC ACC Challenge, the second one. Actually, that could be my worst, is that they stopped doing the SEC Big 12 Challenge, which would have been a much better challenge. ACC is actually kind of cheeks. I don't know that they're buns, but they are cheeks in hoops now, which is kind of a weird thing, right? But the SEC is awesome. And it's funny because, of course, last night I had to stay up, of course, which is a problem, but I had to stay up to watch the end of Auburn at Duke, which is a fantastic game. Duke does get the win. So Auburn lost at Duke and Kentucky lost at Clemson. Those are the only two losses. Two of the best teams, I think, in the SEC. Tennessee, by the way, is probably going to be number one in the AP poll coming out Monday after these results, because Kansas also lost at Creighton. But regardless, the SEC is an absolute wagon in men's hoops. It is going to be an incredible season. It's already been a bunch of great games. If you're missing it, I feel very sorry for you. And my worst, it's my turn to take a swing at the pinata here. I mean, the Predators are just, it's just unbelievable, man. I mean, like, you're kind of running out of words. You know, the Titans stink this year, but they're not that far from, like, you could have seen that as a possibility, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, most of us picked them to go, like, win like 7-8 games, something like that, 6, 7, 8 games. The Preds, again, like you said earlier, you cited Alex Doherty, on pace to have the worst season in franchise history. As we move forward here, obviously, I mean, look, I hope for Preds fans that it gets better, and for the good people in that organization, that they can figure it out, that this team can figure it out. But if they don't, I think people need to understand that the commentary is not going to be peachy, okay? And I think that some people need to understand that it's going to get real ugly, and it should, if your product is this bad. And it's time for everyone to be adults and understand that.
Yep, no doubt about that. Nick Keys, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Yeah, guys, just a couple of interesting little stats that I found intriguing over the last couple of days. I'll start off with actually Monday Night Football, and no, it has nothing to do with Jameis Winston other than him throwing the ball over to Jerry Jeudy. So I don't know if you guys caught this or not, but Jerry Jeudy entered the game 30th in the league in receiving yards. Well, after the game, he ranks 5th. He had 235 receiving yards. He is now ranked 5th in the entire league in reception yards, which I found crazy. So great game for him. Fun game to watch as well. Jameis did get the loss, threw for over 400 yards, I believe. So tough to see for
Almost
him.
500, buddy.
I know.
497.
Wild. Could not believe that actually happened. And then the worst thing in sports, for me at least this week, I turned the Titans game off pretty quickly after the first quarter ended, but this first quarter stat was baffling to me. Teams in the last 5 seasons to allow 28 or more points in the first 20 minutes of a game. The Titans, obviously, on Sunday. The Titans against the Lions back in week 8. And then also the Commanders and the Cowboys back in week 16 of 2021. The Titans just continue to pile up all of the manure of the just horrible performances that we've seen all around the field. But that game was just an utter just disaster. It was awful to watch.
The manure, huh?
Yes.
I like that. My best thing in sports, Joe, Packers, Lions.
Ooh,
Thursday
yeah.
night football tonight, baby. We got ourselves a good one brewing tonight, hopefully. We'll see how it
Excited.
goes. But I'm excited for the Packers and the Lions on Thursday Night Football. Al Michaels, an opportunity to call a good game, which has not happened very often over the last 2 years, Joe. So hope he enjoys it tonight too.
The Lions don't have a defensive line participating in the game, so I would think the Packers would be in good shape, but we'll see.
We'll see what happens on that front. My worst thing, Traylon Burks, his season coming to an end yesterday. I think many people have forgotten that Traylon Burks was on the team based on the way this season has gone. But Titans announcing yesterday that he had ACL surgery and he's going to be out the rest of the year, which means, Joe, is his Titans career over? He had 4 catches for 34 yards this year in 5 games. In his career, he has played 27 games for the Titans, 53 catches, 699 yards, and 1 touchdown. Obviously, that is a far cry from the expectation of what he was when he was a first-round pick. It's now been 3 years of this. I mean, there's no sign that it's really ever going to get any better. He's on the team next year contractually. If you move on from him, I think it's a $4.5 million hit to you. So he could be back next year. A lot of people convinced he's not going to be. What do you think of the Traylon Burks part of this as it relates to his future here with the Titans?
Yeah, I mean, it's it seems to me like a fresh break makes sense for everybody. There's just something when you're the first round pick who was supposed to be replacing the star player who continues to kick butt elsewhere, and you've had such struggles in that place. I feel like for both parties, Titans and Burks, just a new scenery next year is the way to go. That's how I look at it. I mean, I know there's some people who, and they may be right. There's still some talent there. There's still something there. Maybe he'll get healthy and blah blah blah. Maybe I think he has a better chance of it working out for him in another city with another franchise. So that's how I look at it, and that's how I think they should look at it.
Josh in Kentucky says his best thing: Kentucky starting the season 7-0, jumping into the top 5 this week. The worst, nothing can be worse than Cal's start at Arkansas. But I won't kick a gimpy horse when it's down, or whatever that saying means. This from Josh in Kentucky on the text line.
Josh, did you notice that they lost at Clemson? I don't want to put a damper on your best, but there is new information since then. I'm just saying.
One of 2 SEC teams to lose. You hate to see it.
Yes. Tennessee did not lose in their awful dark mode uniforms, but it is not credit to the uniforms.
Looking very good. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We will get into the Titans coming up next. Looking at Will Levis's last 4 performances, we've got some numbers to throw out and shine some light on what that means and how does that influence the conversation on him moving forward. We'll get into that discussion. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Dick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up to begin the 8 o'clock hour. We'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him. I got some tickets to give away to see the Preds take on the New York Rangers at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Tuesday, December 17th. Big caller 3, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a pair of tickets to see the Preds take on the New York Rangers at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Tuesday, December the 17th. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode later this hour at 7:45. Joe, the performance from the quarterback, Will Levis from the Titans, has been better the last 4 games. This past game, a little bit different. You're down 28-0. It's a little harder to evaluate everything that went on with the Titans offense based on how quickly that game was over. And I think they ran the ball like 11 times in the game with how quickly they were down in the game. So obviously, from a game plan stylistic standpoint, did not play out the way they were looking for last Sunday against Washington. But the 4-game sample, the 4-game stats for Levis the last few weeks have been very good. What are some of the numbers that stand out to you with Will Levis as we try to evaluate what he's done over this 4-game stretch here?
Well, I think the numbers here they're good, but this is a good example of, I think maybe some people are going a little far with these numbers in terms of what they're saying. And I'm not trying to diminish his improvement. It's clear. But the numbers, and Mike Herndon put out these numbers a few days ago, 61.7%, 960 yards, 8.3 yards per attempt, which is a very good number. 7 touchdowns, 2 picks, 101.3 passer rating. If you multiply that out using expert math like I like to use, over a 17-game season, you're talking about like 30 touchdowns, 9 picks. Of course, obviously the completion percentage and passer rating would be the same. You'd be over 4,000 yards. 8.3 yards per attempt on a season is a number.
Yeah.
So those numbers, the last 4 weeks, if you went into the season and you said, here are Will Levis's numbers for this season, I might look at those numbers and say, you know what, he might actually get the big deal from this. Not even, certainly they're going to keep him next year. Like, certainly those numbers, I mean, you're not moving on from him again, unless there's just like, oh my God, we know in this organization, Shedeur Sanders is going to be the greatest. We have to do everything we can to get him. But I mean, for the most part, you're thinking of things other than quarterback. But I think this is a great example of, we've all been watching this too, right?
Right.
Numbers can lie to some extent. And I do think those numbers are a little bit misrepresentative of how he's played. I think he's played pretty well. I think he's played better for sure. And I'm just like I've said before, but I think that the way he's playing, if he carries this through the season, this or better, then I would expect him to be back and to probably be QB1. Very interesting to see what else is around him then, right? But also, I think sometimes fans are like taking it like he's playing at a Pro Bowl level in the last 4 games, and I just wouldn't go there based on what I've watched.
No, the only one playing on a Pro Bowl level so far is Jaquan Jackson. He's the only one playing on a Pro Bowl level for the Titans, according to the vote. So just make sure we get that out there. Look, I think one question that's come up this week, I think, is an interesting one. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it too. Like, I've heard people ask, all right, well, how much of this is Will Levis is playing really, really good football right now? And how much of this is he's just simply playing way better than he was to start the year, right? Because there is a difference between those two things. Like, he was bad to start the year to the point where, if you started to forecast out what his future was going to be, it did not include being the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans next year. Like, he was that bad to begin the year. So he's certainly way better than that, right? Like, there's been significant improvement from Will Levis the last 4 weeks compared to what he was to begin the season, with just not only the numbers, but some of the eye tests, right? The decision-making, the accuracy of the ball. I think confidence clearly has grown with him. So there's a significant difference between the way he's playing now and the way he played to begin the year. What does that mean for the overall discussion? Like, I think he's playing good football right now. He's not playing like great elite quarterback play right now. And I'm not saying that he has to, but I do think some in this discussion are taking it a little too far the other way of, well, see, look, Levis has never been the issue. It's been everything around Levis the whole time, and he's not been the issue. And that's just not true. Like, go watch him play earlier this year. Like, he was a huge part of the reason that they were losing games. So he's not doing that anymore. That's good. Like, that's progress. You wanted to see him make progress throughout the year. Now, you also, as I pointed out last week to Karski, I don't think you can just broad brush it like, well, he's made progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, so that means he's got to be back next year. Well, the beginning of the year was such a bad starting point that's not really where I'm making my leap from. I think you look at it the way that he's played, and I would agree with you. If he continues to play the way that he's played the last 4 games in the aggregate, I think that will be enough to get him into the conversation to be the starting quarterback next year. I don't think it's a guarantee. I don't think that it's a no-brainer that he's your starting quarterback next year if he continues to play the way that he's played. But I think he's certainly the leader in the clubhouse at that point, right? Like, and that's for a variety of different reasons. I don't love the free agent options that are out there. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Sam Darnold. You know, in today's day and age, maybe you could make a trade at quarterback, but quite frankly, I don't think the Titans have enough draft capital to do that, and they need to focus on some other areas of their team. And I don't love the quarterbacks coming out in the draft. So there's a myriad of reasons why I think that should be the case. But I would caution against going too far the other way, that Will Levis has looked like some game-changing elite quarterback over the last 4 games, because I don't believe that to be the case either.
Yeah. Well, certainly the idea that, like, I mean, you know, the beginning of the year, he's the top of the list of why they were losing. And some things that aren't as good now were better then, right? But it's also 100% agree that if we're using like the beginning of the year as the baseline, well, then it's very hard not to look better than that. But again, I mean, these numbers are good. I mean, these numbers are better than he's just better than when he was awful, right? I mean, these numbers are good, and it's both sides of the numbers. You can look at like the other day and say, well, okay, so Washington's up 28-0. Do you think maybe, you know, it was he had a little bit softer zone coverages to throw into the rest of the day? Maybe, but also you knew that Washington, they didn't have to worry about the Titans running the ball, so they could just, those guys up front could just say, okay, I'm pass rushing every play. I know what they're doing, right? So I mean, you could look at both sides of these numbers, and I guess you could spin it either way you want to. I'd still also watch them, and I just think that this is a very difficult set of conditions for a quarterback still. You know, you have a good running back, and you have, you know, some decent, you know, obviously NWI is playing really well, and Ridley's woken up at receiver, but the offensive line play is still so bad that it is hard to evaluate. So, yeah, look, this is encouraging. It's good. It's better. It's not great.
Well, again, like it's not been perfect from him either, right? Like we are talking about a 4-game sample size where, you know, he threw a pick 6 against Houston. He's still missing on some throws that you need to see him hit as they move forward here. So it's not like it's been perfect from him. And look, the expectation should not be perfection for the quarterback position. It's been way better than it was to begin the year. And like, it's okay to be encouraged about it, right? Like if you're somebody that was just down in the dumps on Levis, and the way that he's played the last 4 weeks has kind of opened your eyes, and you're leaving the door open for possibility that he could turn out to be a good player after the way he's played the last 4 weeks, that's fine. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I've seen too much of he's our guy. Yep, Levis our guy. I knew it the whole time. He's our guy, and he's going to be the starting quarterback long term for this team. Like, we ain't there yet with the way that he's played.
No, you shouldn't be. I think maybe Adam in Portland will weigh in today. I think Adam in Portland might be representative of, and look, hey, I mean, I don't blame him for reacting to information, but Adam in Portland was like, he must be sent out of town, if not the country, you know, at the end of September. And now I think Adam in Portland's like, he's my guy. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. and again, I'm not meaning to pick on you, but he's a daily contributor. I
Yes.
think he kind of represents sort of that huge shift. And I just, like I'm looking at like just, I mean, I was kind of pumping the brakes even early a little bit, like, okay, Miracle Flip was bad, but maybe there's some redeeming qualities here. And now it's like maybe everything isn't great right now.
615-737-1025. Taking your thoughts on Will Levis, his performance the last 4 games, and what it means for the long-term discussion at quarterback for the Titans. We'll have more on that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. This week's Nashville's Best Deal from Tito's Mexican Restaurant, known for its vibrant flavors and festive atmosphere, bringing the heart of Mexico to Middle Tennessee. Enjoy mouth-watering tacos, sizzling fajitas, and delicious enchiladas, all served with a side of authentic Mexican flair. Get half off a $25 gift card while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on Will Levis and his performance in the last 4 games. Joe, one texter says, Levis is buying grace and time with me. I still believe he's got a ways to go. The last thing I want is another Mariota situation, 4 years to find out that he's just not the guy. Needs to be consistently good the rest of the season. Craig on the text line says, Levis has taken a couple of decent steps. Let's see if he can take 1 or 2 more steps by the end of the season. This from Craig on the text line.
Kyle Tucker from the forthcoming Tucker and Rucker show. Or is it the Rucker and Tucker show? Which would sound better? Tucker and Rucker or Rucker and Tucker?
I kind of like Rucker and Tucker. A little alphabetic order there. That's just me.
Rucker Tucker. He has a very important stat to throw in on this, which is during those 4 games we laid out all those numbers, which again project out over a season to be a really good quarterback. He also got sacked 22 times. So let's see. Oh boy, let's see. The math on that would be, well, certainly it would be 88, and then you add that 17th game. So we're talking more than 90 sacks. So you're on pace as a quarterback to, be playing it like it's not all that far from like a Pro Bowl level with those numbers, and also to have the record for being sacked. Like David Carr would be like, wow, I really feel bad for you with your 92 sacks that happened during that 17-game season. So yes, that's another thing that Kyle brings up. And thank you, Kyle, for your contributions. He now wants to kill me that I'm suggesting Rucker Tucker. But and then this is a very important thing too. It is that these wow plays are here now, right?
Yes.
The wow plays are a part of they have entered the chat, and they were not there. It's like not only were most things going bad early, we weren't seeing, as we talked about at the time. It's like also like where's the awesome throw? You had the one, like the deep throw to Ridley here or there, but it wasn't much. And now we are seeing it. I mean, I think that play he made the other day where he gets out of the rush, uses that strength, keeps his eyes up, drifts left, and darts one to Ridley. That's a wow play. So
did it cross body?
You want to see those? Yes, exactly.
That may be the best play he's made all year, to be honest with you. Nobody's going to remember it because it didn't really result in anything, but that was a heck of a play.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good thing to see. I mean, look, it all, that is an amazing thing. And I know that we've also talked about the sacks and the responsibility for the sacks, and certainly the navigating the pocket thing. Kuharski wrote about that this week. It's a fascinating topic to me because I just think some people have it and some don't. That's one of the reasons I thought Bryce Young was going to be great, because I thought like he seriously is like Spider-Man in the pocket in college, how he would sense rush, evade it, elude it, make a play. And I don't know, maybe we're starting to see that more with him. I did get to watch him the other day, and I was like, gosh, he looks like kind of like a good NFL quarterback to me. But how much can you develop that? I don't know. It's something you work on, but I think some people just that is one of those intangible things that, I mean, maybe some people just kind of have it more than others do. So there's some of it on him, but it's a bad line. The other day, again, I still haven't seen these numbers. I was waiting on somebody to give me these, like the time to throw number, but dude, it was bad the other day. It was instant. He was having to unload like instantly so often. And I thought he did a pretty good job of identifying someone quick and getting the ball out, which is why he only got sacked 2 times in that game, I believe, right? 2?
Yes.
Yeah. So nice 20 sacks in the previous 3. That's solid. Woo. What a number.
Well, here's an opportunity for him this week, right? In this much anticipated Mac Jones, Will Levis showdown that we're all going to be treated to on Sunday. If you want to go by the numbers, and look, believe me, I am well aware that defensive numbers can be misleading, because if you look at the top of this list that I'm about to read off, the best pass defense in the NFL is the Tennessee Titans, baby. They're only giving up 171 yards a game through the air. So there's that. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the worst passing defense in the league by the numbers, Joe, allowing 273.3 yards per game. So the numbers would tell you that there's a heck of an opportunity for the Titans passing offense this week against Jacksonville.
Well, look, that's another thing here, and I gotta say, I mean the bar's kind of high, I think, on expectations for Levis Sunday. He has gone through. Not only have these numbers been very good through 4 games. Let's again, go through the defenses. The Commanders are, that's a good defense. They have a good pass rush. We know the Texans. I mean, the Texans have one of the best, to me, defensive rosters in the league. I know they've been banged up too, but that's a legitimate big time defense. The Vikings, that's the most difficult scheme to play against. And then, I mean, I think that's a consensus in the league, isn't it? From
Yes.
quarterbacks. So now you go to this. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say Levis better go 27 for 32 for 325 and 3, but I do expect him to go out there and have a little bit more time and have a little bit more space and have an opportunity to really be excellent Sunday. I mean, I expect him to have a really good game, which is, again, that's may not sound like much against those Jags, but that is where he has changed the expectations a little bit with his play.
Well, and if he doesn't, the conversation is going to be, man, you couldn't even take advantage of that Jags defense, right? So,
sure.
If he does, then that's great. That's good to see for him coming up on Sunday. The main thing, Joe, is for the most part, he's been taking care of the football. That's what was killing them earlier in the year, is just not only the miracle flip and the rolling the ball on the ground, but even the Packers game, right? Just getting staring down the pick 6 to Jair Alexander. Just some of the decisions with the ball weren't good. And I realized he threw a pick 6 2 weeks ago against Houston. But for the most part, he has done a good job of taking care of the football these last 4 weeks, which is always going to be priority 1 if you're the quarterback.
Yeah. So it's taking care of the ball. Again, the one was bad. Yeah. The one of those two was was critical, and they still won, but that you thought that, oh, there's the game losing play, right? In the moment. And look, it's not to anyone's credit that Fairbairn misses a 5-foot field goal, but he did. So they still won the game. But overall, yes, taking care of the ball. There just aren't that many. It's not like I can think of too many, oh my God, that should have been a pick. Even early in the season when he was throwing picks, there were others he was throwing that I think could have been. And yeah, it looks a lot better. There's no doubt about it. It's now, so he's changed the expectation. He's raised the bar. So now can he go beyond it against bad defenses?
Yep, absolutely. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll have more on the Titans coming up next. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason downtown at JBJ's Nashville this Sunday for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30. They'll break down the Week 14 matchup against the Jaguars, give you the latest updates before the game. The pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up at 7:45. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us at 8 o'clock. Taking your thoughts in the meantime, 615-737-1025. Joe Cam on the text line says, let Levis stay on the bench, get a veteran quarterback in free agency as a patch job for the ship SS Titanic Titan. And should it sink next season, Levis and the veteran quarterback can share a door from the old stadium. This is from Cam on the text line. Nice Titanic reference there, Cam. Well done.
Very nice. Very nice. Not as good as my Simpsons today, but that was
I was going to say.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Second best film / TV reference we've had all day on the program. One texter saying, would the Titans potentially seek a trade for a veteran quarterback like Prescott? Cowboys seem to be regretting that contract extension already. Joe, I feel like Prescott's probably going to be the quarterback of the Cowboys, but the veteran quarterback discussion as a whole, we have seen trades happen a little bit more often with quarterbacks over the last few years in the NFL. Do you think the Titans could go that route this offseason?
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. It does happen a lot more, so I think it's possible. Yeah, Prescott. Yeah, if you're a Titans fan, are you excited about Dak Prescott coming in here on that contract? I mean, I think Dak's a good quarterback, but is Dak a better option than Will Levis? I don't think there's any question.
Yes.
Is Sam Darnold a better option? Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, based on the way Sam Darnold has played this year, Sam Darnold, Kaharski has pointed to him and said, I think that Levis could be that guy at some point, down the road, maybe somewhere else, but hey, maybe it's here, it's also, there are the other factors around that. Like, there's the money, the cap, and all the things that you have to, think about trying to improve the football team beyond outside of quarterback. Do you want to invest in a veteran? Is it smarter to? This is where I think if Levis keeps going, I think it's like, keep building it up, and then look, at some point it may just be like, yeah, it's just not quite good enough. But in the meantime, you could potentially have a better football team if you're making good choices. That is what you have to do. Or if you go all in on someone, and I'm not talking draft, that's different. Draft, now you're kind of setting the clock back a little bit. But if you go all in on someone, are you giving them the conditions they need to win? I mean, look, again, if you brought Jared Goff to this offensive line, we'd all think he was a bad quarterback. It's just how it is with some of these quarterbacks. I would say the same thing about Kirk Cousins, who's struggling a lot, by the way. It's just that, you have to think of these other things too, and what you need to do. And also how much of what's the urgency? What's the urgency to, you better at least be in the playoff race next year.
Yeah.
For this front office, there's that too, I mean, ultimately you're just trying to win as soon as you can in this league all the time, but there are still different levels of urgency. If you're in a quote unquote rebuild or whatever, then fine. But I don't know that that's the case. I think there's probably has to be some urgency from these guys who are working for Amy Adams Strunk right now.
I would think there's got to be some urgency. And how does that influence what they do at quarterback over the offseason? I don't know. Like, it may just end up being that Levis is your best option next year. Dane Brugler at The Athletic put out his first mock draft yesterday. So we've gotten to mock draft season here in the National Football League. I think he had Cam Ward at 2 and Shedeur Sanders at 3. Well, right now the Titans are picking 7th, so that doesn't do you a whole lot of good if you're the Titans there, assuming it's them that you like, or maybe it's somebody else. Like, maybe the Titans get through the draft process and they say, you know what? We love Carson Beck. We don't care that he comes out there at the podium and says that he doesn't like watching football, which is making his rounds this week. We love Carson Beck. Carson Beck's good, and we can get Carson Beck in the draft, regardless if we're picking at 7th or we're picking at 14th or whatever it ends up being. Maybe they love somebody like that. I don't know. But I think the most likely option could end up being, all right, Levis is the best option we have. We don't love any of these quarterbacks in the draft. And we've also got a limited amount of options in free agency. he did show progress at the end of this season, and maybe you could pick up on that. And the hope would be, like, if that's your selling point, Joe, the hope would be that you start at a much higher level next year in year 2 of Brian Callahan's system and his offense and another offseason of those two working together, that the starting point next season is where you leave off this season and you start to build on that next year. That's what the hope was heading into this year, and it did not happen at all.
Right. But yeah, continuity, the exact same system and coaches and all that. And you would think a higher level of confidence. And look, an experience at this point. If Levis gets through this year and he's going to play like this and kind of keep going, keep rising a little bit, well, he will have gone through a whole bunch of stuff and have come out the other side again without knowing exactly where he's going to end up. But he will have gone through a lot of stuff, a lot of self-inflicted stuff, but still, there's value in failing to that extent and then still picking yourself up. I think like with him, like toughness, resilience, grit, all these things. I think these things are all positive aspects of him as a player, So there's that too. But yeah, obviously this year, huge disappointment early, and I think that there was a lot of things wrong beyond him. He was just the worst of those things. And some of those things haven't really gotten better. Again, like, what does it look like if you're Will Levis and all of a sudden you actually do have some level of comfort in the pocket and some level of security, knowing, you know what, I'm going to have a clean pocket on this play.
Right.
I'm actually blown away by how well he stands in at this point. That doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't mean he's a franchise quarterback, but my gosh, there are quarterbacks who would have gone through all this and would be seeing ghosts as soon as the snap comes into their hands. And I don't see that from him.
No doubt about it. Carson on the text line says, honestly, I'd be down for Dak so I could scream, yeah, here we go, every Sunday out there. Man, that him being mic'd up or you hearing that come through the microphone would be amazing. Michael says, let's see here for the text pull up. Titans must bring in Jameis Winston. We need to be able to have some laughs along the way while the team is booty cheeks. This is from Michael on the text line. Joe, your thoughts?
Wait, we need some what while the team is booty cheeks?
Some laughs.
Some laughs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got you. I'm not sure. I don't think that works. That to me does not convey terrible football like Buns does.
I would agree.
I think we've set the new standard for that right now. Kurt on the YouTube chat says phrases and word combos I don't want to hear for the rest of the year: excited plus Titans, excited plus Preds, and excited plus Levis. Nashville sports is brutal right now. Kurt, come on now, buddy. It's not all bad, right? Will Levis is playing better. You don't have to be excited, but can you be intrigued? Is that okay? Can you be sort of, somewhat interested, somewhat willing to, to change your mind a little bit? You don't have to be excited.
One texter,
positive, right?
Yeah, one texter asking, can y'all have one segment where you can be positive about Levis? Just one segment from y'all.
Really?
And what have we been doing the last 40 minutes?
Yeah, we haven't said,
I really wonder,
oh my God, he is clearly
the hearing skills that some of you have sometimes on the text line. It boggles my mind. We just said he's playing at a freaking Pro Bowl level the last 40 minutes on the show with the numbers. If you extrapolate them out for a 17-game season, you guys ever going to be positive about the quarterback?
So I'm going to go back a previous text from this texter who said the majority of Titans fans local media treated Will Levis really crappy before it happened. Yeah. Again, look, first of all, we went through all that stuff back then too, right? Like there was a lot of BS about Levis around the draft. We've talked about that. Some of it was not fair. And some of it to me was just cloak and dagger agent stuff, which happens around the draft. And he got caught up in that stuff a little bit because of his goofy TikToks. But look, we've been, I think, more than fair. I wouldn't, again, it's like sometimes some people think like if you're not all the way one side or the other, then you have a lukewarm take. But I'm sorry, some things are nuanced and most things are gray, and this is gray. I mean, it's better, but I'm not willing to sit here and, give him a $250 million contract. Maybe you are. I'm not.
Yeah. Keith on the text line. Levis improving is doing all of us a huge favor. Will prevent the Titans from taking a gamble and wasting a first-round pick on a quarterback when it needs to be used on other positions. This is from Keith in Mount Juliet. Right now, I would agree. I mean, right now, unless you're just we've talked about this, that the caveat is always just if you're in love with some quarterback in the draft process and you think that it's going to be the answer to your prayers for a franchise quarterback, then you do it. Well, you're not forced to do that if he continues to play this way the rest of the season. Like, you can bringing him back as your starting quarterback becomes a realistic option next year, which is important.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. It's a great way to frame it, Keith. Of course, the problem is then when Cam Ward becomes the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, then we'll revisit that take. So here's a texture. So this is the range that we have here, right? Texter who says, everyone celebrating Levis for playing like an average to low average QB. It's hard to see the Titans continue the history of low average QBs. College play was spot at best, et cetera. Listen, the last 4 games, that's not a low average QB. Now, again, I think those numbers are a little bit deceiving, a little bit, but you can spin that either way. The 4-game sample, I would argue, certainly statistically, again, we did the whole season. That's very good.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's very good. So, and the thing is, like you've said, Robbie, if we're comparing it to the beginning of the season, well, then, that doesn't matter. Great. You're better than that. But also, I think that when you keep the beginning of the season in mind, then I think you're just going to naturally be more skeptical about this, which I understand.
Sure.
But if you just take this in a vacuum, it's not low average QB.
Has anybody asked Will Levis his thoughts on playing football when it's cold? He seemed to respond well to the 40 degrees on Sunday. Gonna be in the 50s on this Sunday, so he should be in good shape. Jarvis Brownlee should be in good shape. Titans are ready to go with the weather coming up this weekend.
I mean, Levis is from Connecticut, right?
Yeah, he should be fine.
He might try to go out there and see if they'll let him play shirtless. just paint his number on his chest.
Like a husky. He's like, yes, bring me the cold. I love it. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Take more of your thoughts. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
I want an ice cream, and I want a hot dog, and I want Rand Fire, and I want a hamburger. Yeah, it is buns. We're talking about Titans, right? We're switching from one bun to the other. Maybe you wrote a country song. I suck at writing songs. My songs are no good.
In my life. It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. I enjoyed that mashup, Keezer. Well done. Very nice stuff there.
We need some more country music, Joe. Come on.
Remind me, who was I talking about?
You were talking about Ryan O'Reilly after the post game.
Right. Yeah, there we go. Ryan O'Reilly could write the saddest country song about his own game.
He could.
Maybe I'll come up with that. Maybe I'll maybe that'll lighten the mood a little bit.
I am the worst.
But
Ryan,
I
you scored 2 goals tonight. I could have scored 7.
Boy, wouldn't that be a refreshing post-game conversation at some point? All right, a little bit of a down note today, but I gotta use this time to pay tribute and to mourn someone who I would not say I was close with, but I think like a lot of people, covering SEC football knew Bob Holt. We're friendly with Bob Holt. But everyone loved Bob Holt. Even if you didn't know him that well, you loved Bob Holt. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, if you've ever listened to SEC Media Days or watched it, like in the last, I don't even know, many, many years, he is the dominant best thing about SEC Media Days. So first of all, rest in peace, Bob Holt. Prayers to his family and friends, 65 years old. Passed away, I believe, yesterday. Michael Casagrande from AL.com wrote a tremendous tribute, which I just retweeted. But Bob Holt was a guy who always sat in the front row to the right and asked every single person a question. Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And, it became sort of like he became, I think, probably the most entertaining thing about SEC Media Days every year, to the point people were writing about him. And he even again, Saban, I know we all know Saban now as this lovable, fun guy on game day. He's given Pat McAfee titty twisters and stuff. And it's like, oh, that Nick Saban, yay. Nick Saban, for most of his career, has been an absolute grump. And of course, even Saban would smile and joke around with Bob Holt. Arkansas Democrat Gazette, to me, just, there's just nothing in this business to me that like connects with people. I think more than like a beat writer covering a team for a long time, and there's the relationship, and there's just the institutional knowledge, the expertise, and he was just such a great. We would laugh like the question. Bob Holt, and sometimes he'd ask kind of like funny questions, but a lot of times he'd ask really important questions. But man, he asked questions. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be, right? You're supposed to be curious, and you're supposed to, you're trying to find things out. And he was the ultimate throwback newspaper print guy. And he covered Arkansas, Missouri this last weekend, and apparently collapsed on his way back from the press box. So, obviously there's no perfect way, of course, to go out. There's no good way to go out. But I mean, you're talking about someone who, went out on the job. And I think that's fitting. And I hope the SEC, first of all, I hope the SEC never does another SEC Media Days for multiple reasons. But seriously, like there's no reason to have them now without Bob. Okay. I'm sure that's not going to happen. So I definitely hope that the SEC from now on has an empty chair, front row, right for Bob Holt for as long as that event exists. Rest in peace, Bob Holt.
Yeah, very well said. And, he's covered Arkansas his entire career. He was Arkansas Sports Writer of the Year 4 times, member of the Arkansas Sportscasters and Sports Writers Hall of Fame, and was also a member of the Football Writers Association of America, on board with the U.S. Basketball Writers Association, and a voter for the Heisman Trophy as well. So passing away at 10:38 p.m. last night. And those around the college football world, the tributes starting to roll in this morning. I just saw, Caroline Fenton give her thoughts on the passing of Bob Holt as well. And like you said, Joe, I mean, it became like every coach in the SEC, by the time SEC media days rolled around, knew who he was. They knew where Bob Holt was. It was pretty, like, as somebody who enjoys, I think, sometimes watching the podium of SEC media days, even if the event itself, certainly in attendance of it, could be a little monotonous at times. I did enjoy the Bob Holt questions. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was, every single person was going to get one. You knew that, and I didn't reading Casagrande's story, and again, he wrote about him before, during SEC media days, but I did not realize that Bob Holt is a fan of the Detroit Tigers and the Green Bay Packers. So,
yeah,
how about that? A Tigers and Packers fan. So,
how many of those exist?
That's me and that's you. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. But you're talking about just such a long time of just doing his work at a high level. Here's a quote that he gave Casagrande about from this piece. Is, quote, people kind of make fun of me for, I don't know, wearing people down. Not comparing myself to Mike Wallace at all, but if you ask someone enough questions, I just have a natural curiosity that I think every reporter should have. I just like to ask questions, end quote. And it's 65 is way too early, and I have no doubt he would have done this job for 20 more years. And it's just a huge loss for our industry, along with obviously his family and friends.
No doubt about that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us coming up next. We'll get into the Titans and all things NFL with him. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. And as we do every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is it true? I heard a rumor that Joe had his daughter do the Rex rant last week. Is that right?
Oh, it happened.
Did that happen?
And it was glorious.
I try to pawn off whenever I can, man.
Starting her young.
We're still getting text about it. It was the greatest rant ever performed. And she just basically ripped Rexrode for 10 straight minutes.
Oh, my God. That's Hall of Fame. How do I get a hold of this? Like, I need that rant.
We can find it. We can send it to you. It was Rexrode's still very excited about it.
That's awesome. Love it.
Disrespect.
Next time I'm in Tennessee, she and I will have to get together. We'll work on some material.
That's right. So, Charles, we've been discussing Will Levis on the program today. 4 games now where if you look at the numbers and kind of extrapolate those out, pretty good football being played by Will Levis. Do you believe that he's turned a corner here? How do you view kind of the Levis conversation as it relates to the Titans and quarterback as a whole as they move forward?
Well, he and Nick Westbrook-Akine, I mean, there's definitely a nice connection there. The film has definitely been better. There's no question about that. It's, it's funny because when you look at the schedule now, kind of knowing what how the playoff picture shapes up, it's crazy the schedule the Titans have played since mid-September. Like, Green Bay, playoff team. Miami, playoff team if Tua hadn't gotten hurt. Indianapolis, Buffalo, Detroit, both playoff teams, high-end Super Bowl contenders. New England, Chargers, Minnesota, Houston, Washington. All of those could be playoff teams. It's a brutal schedule now when I look back at this. And the interesting thing is, some of the games, particularly recently, you should beat New England. They beat New England, right? The Houston win was a little bit of a surprise, but, obviously played well in that game, win on the road in Houston. You see Levis, ever since coming back, from injury, he seems to be making smarter decisions. We talked about it before. He seems a little bit more comfortable. I think I'm very curious to see how this goes against Jacksonville, because this is another bad team. And I truly believe this, and we've talked about this in past years. I think when franchises are trying to get themselves together, the first thing you have to do is learn how to beat bad teams consistently. Like, you're never going to get yourself on the road to success until you learn how to walk, right? So beat bad teams. This is a bad team. Mac Jones, starting at quarterback, obviously Trevor Lawrence is down. That's a whole big thing now for Jacksonville. This is a very, very winnable game. It's a very, very big opportunity for Levis to take another big step here, have a, not a moderately good game. He could have a really good game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. To me, if that happens, then I'm like, okay, maybe Levis, and okay, I'll get sucked in. Maybe Levis is on the traditional quarterback timeline, the way it used to be, right? Which was, you have year one, it's tough. Year two continues to be tough, but you start to see signs of progress in the second half of the season. And then year three is that traditional, okay, now they take the big step forward. Year three is where they really start to put things together, and that old cliche of the game slowing down and all these things. Maybe he's on that timeline, right? I mean, that is something that used to be an accepted developmental, span for quarterbacks. You would give them 3 years to get themselves where they needed to be. So look, if he takes a big step against Jacksonville, I'm willing to get sucked in and say, okay, maybe we just need to accept that he's not going to be one of these guys that walks into the NFL out of the box and plays great. By the way, I will mention, I live in Houston, and CJ Stroud, all of a sudden they have offensive line problems, and that guy, he's still great. I mean, there's no question, but you can see how much a player comes back to earth when suddenly the 5 guys in front of him just cannot protect him consistently. It is a massive disruption to his game, and I don't think you should look at Levis without staring at that offensive line and then looking at other places and go, oh, geez, look, when they start to have really significant offensive line problems, so does their great quarterback.
No, it's a great point, because Stroud appears to even be just missing throws that were layups last year. And that's what happens, right? The clock
mentally
changes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's human nature. We don't, again, I will go back to the well over and over again. Jared Goff, put him here the last couple of years, and we'd all be like, God, is he still in the league? I truly believe that.
Right.
And he's, but good for him. They're taking advantage of a good situation means so much to a quarterback. Well, you mentioned
Joe. Well, let me ask you this too. I mean, don't you think, I don't know when it was like the last couple of weeks, Levis got asked about his play and he made the joke about, well, what did he say? He was like, he basically described a couple of stupid decisions that like some of the dumb things.
I'm not still
I'm
giving.
I'm not
Flipping
doing
the ball
that
the other
anymore.
team.
And and everybody laughed, but I was like, actually, like to hear him say that, I was like, that's a positive to me. Like it's recognition. He recognizes, what good and bad play is, and the things that that's to me, especially if he learns that and doesn't and can work that out, that's a big step. Just getting rid of the horrendous, mistakes, self-inflicted mistakes, like the really bad ones, getting that out of the way. If that hadn't existed in Levis's game, don't you think we would have felt a little bit different? Right? It was like the horrendous moments where you're like, this dude just doesn't get it when you see those things happen. And if those didn't exist, you would go, okay, well, he's struggling, but at least it looks like things that we've seen other good quarterbacks struggle through. We don't see the truly high-level quarterbacks. We rarely see them go through just absolutely, abominable mistakes, other than like maybe Brett Favre. Like we all grew up watching Brett Favre just do idiot things after idiot things, but then he would cover it with, the talent and
touchdowns.
Yeah, the crazy things he could turn around and do. So most guys that were making some of those mistakes that Levis made don't recover, but it doesn't mean that he can't. It just and to hear him, put a voice to that, some recognition to that, I thought that was really positive. I'll never forget when I heard that. I was like, oh, okay, I like that. He can have a lighthearted moment and be like, yeah, that's not great. Like, come on, I can't do that. And then on top of it have. And it's not just me, I've reached out to other guys and I said, what do you think of Levis film? And they're like, it's getting better. Him and Bryce Young, those are the two guys where I think probably over the last month, even the critics are like, yeah, it looks better, it looks smarter, it looks more comfortable, it looks, the decisions that are being made look a lot more sensible. Even the last pick six, which wasn't great, but again, it's a football play. It's a throw you don't want to make, but he came back from that. Right. And so, I think there's reasons to be positive. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's fine. But I'm glad we could talk about reverse Robin Hood today some, but I just, no, I mean, I think the intangibles are there with Levis. It's, we're just finding we're still trying to figure out all the tangibles, but no, I think that was a good sign. You mentioned the Texans and Jaguars, Charles. They've had an interesting week since Sunday. Azeez Al-Shaair, Trevor Lawrence. It was a bad play, no question. It was a dirty play. The forearm is in there.
The forearm.
I think it should have been one game, in my opinion. But what's your take on that and how it all went down?
Well, you saw, the response from John Runyon, obviously, who was delivered the letter and, meted
that was
out.
strong.
The letter was pretty strong, but it was clear part of what they didn't like was that there was like follow-up stuff. It was like, you grab a guy's face, man. Like, it's like, you didn't just do this. And on top of it, there was this big scuffle and you were a big part of it. And some of the actions, was clear they saw it, the league saw it, that some of the actions he took in the scuffle afterward were as inflammatory as what he had done to Lawrence. I have a problem with DeMeco Ryans, Tom Brady, all these people who are kind of like putting it on Lawrence, where it's like, oh, well, you're sliding a little bit late. okay, I hear you say that. Nobody deserves a forearm to the face in that situation. Like, it wasn't just like it was a late hit. It was how I don't know. Even in bang bang plays, I think guys know, what you're doing with your arm, right? What you're doing with your shoulder. Whenever a guy's head's coming at you, I do think there's at least some thought process that has to go through your mind when you see a quarterback take off line. And there's a flip side of this too. And I think Mahomes is kind of dirty when it comes to this, because Mahomes knows, especially at the sideline, you'll see him try to eke out some extra stuff because he knows that players pull up a little bit at the sideline. Like, they're not going to kill him, because if he gets 1 foot out of bounds and they hit him, that's going to be an automatic 15-yard penalty. And you see him kind of do some stuff that I guess some people call it clever. I think it's kind of dirty. You're taking advantage of a situation where, I don't know. I'm not a big fan. This is like Brady when he used to work the officials constantly when anybody would touch him. But it's, I mean, Alshire, and then leaning into this villain thing post the suspension. I know he's upset. I get it. 3 games. I'm with you. It probably should have been a game. I think the Texans' big thing is, and D'Amico Ryan said this, they've looked out at other suspensions and fine situations. Jeffrey Simmons is the one that they keep hammering on, where they're just like, why is this a situation where it's not a suspension, or why isn't a fine first? Why is it this automatic suspension? And then why is it 3 games? And it is what it is at this point. I mean, maybe it was an overreaction on their part, but again, there was an opportunity to cut it back. That didn't happen, obviously, in the appeal, and now they move on. For the Jaguars, you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, great. So now our quarterback's knocked out for the season. Now he has this big AC joint surgery on his non-throwing arm. Like, it's just another year in the Trevor Lawrence sort of odyssey where it's lost. It's like another lost season for them. And you're like, okay, he's 25, but just at what point is this ever going to turn the corner? And it's just not getting there for them. I'd be pretty concerned. And frankly, like, I ranked all the openings and the potential openings for head coaches just solely based on quarterback situation. I think, Dak's coming off his second, season-ending lower body surgery. Clearly, he's not the same athlete he was, after the last surgery. Now there's another one in his lower body. That plus the contract, it's like, Trevor Lawrence plus this contract, the lack of development, the injuries now are starting to pile up. If you're head coach, I'm kind of like, man, I don't know, maybe I'd rather take a clean slate at quarterback than go in with guys that are starting to either get, starting to add age and injuries, and then have this massive contract too. I hear everyone saying that Jacksonville's a super attractive job and everybody keeps pointing to Lawrence. And I'm like, okay, like, we keep treating Trevor Lawrence like he's going to be that thing we thought he was going to be. What's the line? Like, I'd ask you guys, where's the line there? How long do we go before we're like, it's not going to happen?
I'm already there.
I'm already there. Yeah, he's not going to be that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was supposed to be a generational QB. He's not going to be that guy.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're not being hyperbolic. That's what everyone thought. Generational, like, walks into the league and is instantaneously a top 10 quarterback and quickly moves to, that top 3-4 player in the NFL. And we just have not seen, even the year that obviously they made the playoff run and a lot of things got put together. You could argue that CJ Stroud's rookie season was as good as Trevor Lawrence's best season in the NFL. I think you absolutely make that argument. And
without question,
with these injuries, and that contract, I don't understand. I still am kind of, my mind's blown. I know why they did it and all those different things that go into it, but it's a tough spot to be in. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the 49ers do with Purdy, because I don't think they're just going to go, yeah, sure. Like, they want to sign an extension. Absolutely. But I think that the numbers are to a point and things are kind of going the way they're going this season, that I would not be surprised at all if they have a rough go the remainder of the year. Whether I don't think it's just an automatic that Purdy gets that massive extension everybody expects.
So you bring up San Francisco, expected to be at the top of the NFC this year, and clearly they're not at 5-7. You look at the top of the NFC, you've got Detroit at 11-1, Philadelphia at 10-2, the Vikings at 10-2, the Packers at 9-3. Now, two of those teams will play tonight in Green Bay and Detroit. But what do you make of kind of the top there? Detroit's 11-1, and in some years would be running away with it. But you look over the shoulder, and Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Green Bay all right there.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, the game against Green Bay tonight is massive to me. It's just massive because I don't know how many more injuries the Lions can sustain on defense and not have this eventually start to roll backward on them. I feel like the last couple of weeks we've seen a little bit of why there should be some nervousness. I mean, the Bears, what an atrocity at the end of that game of Thanksgiving game. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, I got to tell you, like, Dawn and I were in the car and I'm listening to it, and I was like, he's fired. Like, that's it. Like, this is the craziest thing that I've ever. Like, Matt Eberflus is definitely fired. Like, there's no question that's happening. And so that's the game you got to win. You got to dig yourself out of this hole against Houston. It's just, how long do you kind of play with that fire before it's starting to burn you, and you keep losing these players? What's like 13? I think they have 13 defensive players on injured reserve. 13, and they're not like small potatoes. Arguably your two best linebackers are on injured reserve. Your best defensive player and Aiden Hutchinson's on injured reserve. I mean, it's crazy the pieces that they've lost up to this point. So I think, to me, that's a shaky 11-1, but tonight is one of those games where they've been able to overcome it time and time again. But this is one I think they have to win. They can't afford. Dan Campbell kind of said, like, we're in the playoffs now. I agree with him. I think with everybody sneaking up, with Philadelphia playing the way they're playing right now, with Green Bay and obviously Minnesota both being in the division and pressing, they're on the clock. They could very easily end up not only not being the number one seed in the NFC. I mean, they could end up being like the 2 or the 3 by the time this is, or the 3 or the 4. I mean, it's that tight. So, it's going to be a huge opportunity for them tonight to kind of get things. What do you think of the Jamal Adams trade? That's right. I wanted to ask you guys, or not trade.
That'll make a big difference. Well, they do need linebackers. So.
I mean,
I don't.
Like, it was definitely. I kind of, it was a negative for me. Like, when I heard it, I'm like, oh boy, like we're kind of to this point, because I don't know how you explain to me, especially after seeing what you saw. How do you put them on the field in a way where it's useful? Like
as a blitzer, like as a blitzing nickel. I mean, like that's it. I mean, so like that's not much. Now the David Long pickup is actually pretty good for them. That was, and I've always been a David Long fan, since he was here, and obviously he's probably diminished some. But no, if the Packers don't score for it, I'm a huge Matt LaFleur guy. But if the Packers don't score 40 tonight, then I think he should be fired. Like, they should score a touchdown on every possession. Like, the Lions should not be able to stop anything.
And they have the pieces to do it. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that the Packers are potent enough. And that's the scary thing, I think, about some of these other NFC. I mean, especially when you look at Philly, right? Philly and Green Bay have the horses offensively to go toe-to-toe with Detroit and make it like a 51-50 game. There's no question in my mind that they can do that. By the way, to clean up something earlier, I think I said Jeffrey Sims. I meant Kareem Jackson. I'm like, Titans are on the brain. So about Houston being upset, Kareem Jackson went through all the suspension issues. I said Jeffrey Simmons just because I'm talking to you about the Titans, probably staring at their roster while I'm talking to you.
To back up a point you made, though, the schedule faced to this point for the Titans is third toughest in the NFL.
It's got to be. It's got to be.
Yeah, only the Jags and Cardinals tougher. So there you go.
No, and you don't want to make that excuse, right? You don't. But I definitely, this morning when I was scrolling through the schedule, I'm like, oh my God, now that we're in December and we know what all these franchises are, it's just brutal. Like, it's crazy how tough that schedule has really been. And again, I keep thinking about Levis in that developmental standpoint, and I'm like, if the conversation for us will end up being, let's say he ends up finishing out this season on a positive note, and then really has a great offseason passing program and really starts to put it together in year 3, we'll just sit here and go, oh, it was kind of the normal experience of what it used to be, where it takes a couple of years for things to slow down for a quarterback. Unfortunately, I fall into the same trap that I think a lot of people do now. It's we just expect right away that everybody who's, it's just this. I think, Joe, you even brought it up, like how fast quarterbacks are getting, thrown away in this league. I think a couple of weeks ago, you were like, you made a remark about we just cash out on guys after a year, 1 year, 2 years. And it's like, nope, that guy's not going to work. So let's just move on to this next thing. And it becomes this, kind of a rough, I think, cycle for quarterbacks where no one's allowed to be developed anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with the pressure of the job now, because coaches get fired more after, 1 or 2 years now than ever before. Like Antonio Pierce, like I was talking to somebody yesterday and they're like, yeah, he's very much hanging by a thread and, with the Raiders. And I'm like, God, this is terrible ownership. Like, how bad are owners now where they're just cashing out one coach after another after 1 year, 2 years, like just you're killing your organization. And, I think some of that bleeds into the quarterback decisions as well.
Well, speaking of that fine organization, actually, I'll go there with you, Charles, to wrap it up, because we are back in the debate of one yesterday, Vrabel, Ohio State, that could pop. And I think it's not something you rule out, but also I still would guess he would take an NFL job. There's been some talk, Kaharski here is big on Raiders, Brady his piece of the team. Vrabel comes in with his buddy Brady, and replaces Pierce. But I would have my misgivings about that ownership and that whole situation. But
that ownership,
give me your December 5th prediction on Mike Vrabel's next job.
Man, that's a really good question. He's going to be in the mix for New Orleans. I talked to somebody there. He'll be on their list. They will definitely seek an interview with him. The Bears are interesting because, look, the Bears right now I think what they've recognized now is that a very big part of their problem that has lasted for a while, and ownership has a lot to do with this, is just like cultural. They don't understand how to create a culture in Chicago. They just don't. And they've seen it in a number of different things that have happened, both, football decisions, but then other things that have happened inside the building. And I was talking to somebody there about Cliff Kingsbury and okay, Cliff's got this connection with Caleb, all these different things. And I was kind of telling this person, like, man, when I went through Arizona after Cliff, all you heard was it wasn't the greatest culture that he had set up. There was a lot of lack of accountability with some of the young guys under Cliff. Is that what you really want to bring into Chicago? And then this guy brought up Vrabel. He said, well, yeah, it could end up being that culture kind of guy, the leader kind of guy, Vrabel, because I think one thing that the Bears really like in the division, I think they've been very impressed with what Dan Campbell's been able to do in terms of like not only harnessing the minds of the fan base, but also consistently just pounding on this idea of like, this is who we are. This is what we're going to be. Like over and over and over and every single year. And this is the consistency we're going to bring to the table. And I think there's some thought inside the Bears organization that amongst coaches who are not super old, it's sort of like, okay, maybe Bill Belichick can bring that to the table. Maybe like a Pete Carroll can bring that to the table, but who are the young guys? I think they believe Mike could be someone who could bring that to the table. So I would not rule out the Bears. The Ohio State thing to me is really intriguing because there were some people around Mike when things were taking a left turn with the Titans who sure seemed to think that he was absolutely open to returning back to college and going to Ohio State. Now this was, it was probably 2 years ago that these were conversations I was having. And it was I don't want to say it was but in that 2 years, there's been nothing but a wave of coaches who want to get out of college and get into the NFL because of the portal and NIL. And they're just like, it's not worth it anymore. It's way too horrible trying to, deal with this on a 365-day basis. But look, Mike toyed with the idea of being the defensive coordinator for the Giants at one point. And people around him were like, no, don't do that. You don't, just wait. Your next job will be a head coaching job. That didn't happen, obviously, in the first hiring cycle. So now he's in Cleveland. The Cleveland media base there, it's funny to me because I talk to people in the organization. They're like, dude, they just won't lay off. Radio will not lay off Mike, Kevin Stefanski getting fired and Mike stepping in. Which is hilarious because when you talk to people in the Browns organization, they're now firing Kevin Stefanski. He is not the problem. Like, everybody there knows what the problem is, but I don't want to say they see the negatives of Mike being in the building, but they definitely understand when you bring in a guy like this, people tend to stare at him a lot on the, in practices on the sidelines and expect that, hey, now we have our replacement in the building. So I'll be curious to see if I don't know that he necessarily has a place in Cleveland after this, and not because of anything he's done. I think it's just them trying to clean up the chaos inside the organization and an owner that reacts to what he hears on radio and what the fan base feels. I think Mike will have some opportunities at some. He's definitely going to get some interviews. I don't know if I want to say he'll definitely have some opportunities. You tell me, Ohio State wise. After that, that Michigan loss was literally one of the most inexplicable things I've ever seen in my life from a football standpoint. I've never seen a team that can't throw the football and is missing every good player basically off of their national championship team, beat an Ohio State team that was loaded in every possible way, including the coaching staff. I've never seen anything like that happen before.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I do, but if a really good NFL job
would
would
Mike want that though? Do you think Mike would want to go back into college football the way it is now? Because it's not constituted the way it was when he was last there, right?
Yeah, look,
Even as a coach.
Sure. No, it's a concern, but I've been consistent on this for 2 years since I wrote this column everybody got mad about 2 years ago. Vrabel would be an amazing recruiter. And I think in a lot of ways actually would work better in the college game than the pro game. And yes, it sucks. But if you're Ohio State, it sucks way less because you will have the best players every year and most weeks. So it's the only job.
What about a re-recruiter, Joe? I think that's the problem where you see a lot of these guys burning out. It's the re-recruitment, not the initial recruitment. Everybody can land the number one class. It's just re-recruiting that class every single year to make sure they get to, a sophomore season where they start to really actually contribute as starters.
Yeah. Obviously you hope that so there are people who take care of that too, because these college teams have personnel departments, but also you're doing some re-recruiting and you're also saying, you know what? I think that Alabama receiver would work well here. Let's go get him.
Yeah.
So, but a good NFL job would still be, that'd be my betting.
I'll
bet
just
on that.
Leave it with this and we can wrap it up. I don't think Mike wants to be in the kind of role that he's in now much longer. I think he wants to
He'll be a head coach next year somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the priority for Mike this next off season is to find himself a head coaching spot. And I don't want to say I don't think he'll just take anything, right? But I think if there are good opportunities out there, I think he will take a good opportunity rather than waiting for a perfect opportunity. I'll put it that way.
Yep. Charles, great stuff as always, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Take care, guys.
Absolutely. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what he had to say coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Robby and Rexrode live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Joe, your thoughts on what Charles had to say about Vrabel? Said the Saints definitely will have Vrabel on their radar, maybe in Chicago as well. What did you make of what Charles had to throw out there about the former Titans head coach?
Yeah, so when he was talking about that with the Bears, I think it was PK. I don't remember. Did PK say it on the air or off the air? I don't remember. He was talking about Sam Phelan, Chicagoan on the Titans beat. Who, by the way, is he still on Survivor? I still have never seen an episode of Survivor in my entire life. He's still going?
I think he's still going.
Damn, good job, dude. That's awesome. I should have watched. But anyway, apparently Sam's saying, that like the culture thing, the Vrabel thing in Chicago would be a hit. It is interesting. I get it. I totally get that idea. I also get the idea of what if you paired Ben Johnson's creativity with Caleb Williams? What would that mean, right? But I don't know, man. I think I think I would probably lean Vrabel way if I was the Bears or that kind of coach. And then look, you have to have good people offensively. You have to hire good people. And yes, you may lose them, but we act like it's, the end of the world sometimes when Andy Reid's lost a bunch of, and I know that he's like the guy, right? So that's a little different, but still, I mean, there are plenty of guys who got head coaching jobs. I guess that's kind of dried up because the Bears helping us realize that it's more Andy than anyone. It just, to me, it is important. I make fun of culture, but when you're dysfunctional like the Bears clearly are, I do think someone like a Vrabel has even more value to shake that up. He came here, and I would not say it was dysfunctional at all. I mean, it was a good team, a playoff winning team, good coach. But I do think that he's a clean up a bad culture coach for sure.
615-737-1025, our phone number. It is time for Pred's Pick to Click. Preds in action tonight, taking on Montreal. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025. If you guess a goal scorer for the Predators tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game.
It's time for Pred's Picks to click.
And a shot at the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Pred's tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. It's Pick to Click. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
Preds in action tonight, taking on the Montreal Canadiens. Puck drop 6 o'clock, pregame 5 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. No change in the standings from yesterday. Rexrode in first place with 5 correct answers. The listeners, Nick Keyser and myself, all with 2. With that in mind, let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Lenny. Lenny, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators tonight?
I'm going to go with the odds. I'm going to pick Philip Forsberg.
Going with Philip Forsberg. Lenny, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Forsberg off the board. Nick Keyser, you're up next in the competition. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
I'm going to go with Zach Leroux. It's his first game back in his hometown tonight.
You're going with Zach Leroux to get on the board. I will go, Joe. Give me Brady Shea. Brady Shea to get on the board tonight. Leroux, Shea, Forsberg off the board. Rexrode, your pick to click for the Predators.
I'm not picking Stamkos anymore. I'll go Yossi.
Here we go. Forsberg, Leroux, Brady Shea, Roman Yossi. Definitely the first time we've had that combination in Pred's pick to click. The other combinations aren't really working, so we'll see if this one does, Joe.
Is that the first Shea of the year?
I think so.
Hey, why not, man? Throw it out there.
I mean, forwards aren't really scoring goals right now. So.
Hey. So, at some point, maybe we have to keep going back and then throw Saros in there.
Well, maybe so. Maybe so. Joe, we talked about them to begin the show. You have the game. Look, I'm not going to act like they had the game in control last night because they did not. They were up 1-0. They generated 12 shots on goal to the first 2 periods. So it's not like the Predators were in complete control of the game. They were doing a good job of defending, the Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, until they weren't in the third period. And 3 goals in the first 5 minutes of the third, you're down 3-1. And a 2-goal deficit at this point for the Predators right now is almost like a death sentence. Like they can't overcome it. 7-13-6 on the year. The offense continues to be a huge problem. 2 games that if you're going to find a way to somewhat crawl back into this, Joe, you need to win tonight in Montreal and then on Saturday against Ottawa. But right now, you're talking about the worst offensive team in the NHL, a team that's won 7 out of 26 games so far this year. It's Groundhog Day here if you're a Predators fan with the way that this season has gone so far, and it just felt like more of the same last night.
Yep, bang, 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 and it's over. I mean, it's just a bad combination to know that, like you said. You're not coming back from that. Also, to keep blowing leads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you have the record you have, right? Like, you pick one of the 2 bad traits, that you're basically toast and you can't generate enough offense, or that you can't lock it down when you have a lead in the third period of a game. Like, I'll throw this out there because we're throwing stuff at the wall. And if they don't win tonight, they don't get 4 points to me against Montreal and Ottawa. This negativity that apparently, this perceived negativity is going to get worse. But does it make sense? I understand the general idea behind this system, and also your point that you always make, which is we make too much of system. But I don't know. Does it make sense to play a quote unquote safer, more defensive minded brand of hockey at some point?
I mean, maybe, but it doesn't really matter what system you play. Like, you got to score more than 2 goals a game. Otherwise, you're just not going to win very often. You can play your defensive brand. You can really lock in on trying to suffocate people defensively. People have gone that route before. Players too good in this league, man. Like, you're going to take a penalty. You're going to put teams on the power play. Like, bottom line is you got to score. Like, you got to get to 3 goals way more often than they are. Like, no, but you don't have to be the best team in the league. But if you're scoring 2.30 goals per game, which is dead last in the league, you do not give yourself a chance in this league.
So no, then.
Yeah, I'm going no.
Okay. Well, then how about make it more fire wagon than you could ever make it? How about
Open
that?
it up.
Let's go the other way.
Look, man.
Screw the D zone.
If these teams are going to lose, Titans and Reds are going to lose 9-8. I don't care. Just let it fly, man. Let's go score some goals here tonight.
By the way, I'm going to call a shot right now. You just brought it up to me. The Titans are going to exceed 30 points on Sunday.
Really?
I've been talked into it as we've talked in this show about Levis's numbers, going through who they've played.
That'd be a third time this year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not like it's completely unprecedented. They just did it 2 games ago. But yes, anytime they would do that, you'd be like, whoa, I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to exceed 30 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm calling that shot.
I like it.
I'll call another shot. The Preds get 3 goals tonight. How about that? Is that the equivalent? Preds 3, Titans 30. That's the equivalent.
How about that? That does it for us today here on the program. Chasing Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.